Mduduzi Manana's resignation, and I'm joined via Skype by Bronwyn Pithi. She is with the Women's Legal Centre. Bronwyn, thank you very much for your time. Firstly, your reaction to Mr. Manana's resignation as a Member of Parliament.
Thanks very much. Well, the resignation is long overdue. He was convicted of a criminal offence for assaulting a number of women last year already, and in August of last year, so that's almost a year ago, the Women's Legal Centre submitted an official complaint to the Ethics Committee in Parliament, highlighting the fact that obviously he was still an MP and had indicated that he had no intention of resigning as an MP, and asked for an inquiry into that very thing. And unfortunately, as you now can see, it's taken nearly a year for him to resign.
What do you think finally led him to fall on his sword, so to speak?
Well, I mean, according to his version, the reason he's resigned is so that he can work for his constituency, to work more on his foundation, to commit energy to the forthcoming elections. So sadly, in his statement, as far as I can see, there was no indication that the reason he was resigning as an MP is because he does not see himself as a fit and proper person to serve as a Member of Parliament and to represent the people of this country.
Well, he seems to think that he is vindicated around this issue of violence against women that he seems to have a propensity to perpetuate. He says that the fact that the NPA says it won't be pursuing any charges against him because the case may not be winnable, this is actually, this proves that he indeed was not wrong in any way.
Okay, so I think it's important to separate the two issues and to separate the two cases. The case that we put our complaint in related to the assaults from last year, which he pleaded guilty to and which he was convicted for. So that, he's never been exonerated, as it were, around that. He was prosecuted and he was found guilty and he was sentenced. The case to which you're referring now refers to Ms. Wiro, who was his previous domestic worker, who brought criminal charges against him, again, for assault and for various other things. The fact that the NPA has declined to prosecute in no way exonerates him. It's a decision by the NPA based on available evidence to not pursue a prosecution because they don't believe that there is a chance of success. That doesn't mean he's exonerated. And I think it's very disappointing that he has tried to link his resignation to a so-called exoneration for an offence that he allegedly perpetrated recently. The fact of the matter is that he was not an appropriate person to be serving as a Member of Parliament in relation to the criminal offences that he committed last year of acts of violence against women.
What do you think of the NPA's decision, by the way? This is one element that I found interesting. Why do you think that they took this particular step of not going after Mr. Manana, given that he already had a previous conviction?
Look, it's very difficult as an outside person to the NPA to comment on the decisions that are made by the NPA, specifically because no detailed reasons have been given as to why they're not pursuing a prosecution. It does fall into the greater issue of complainants being given reasons as to why the prosecution doesn't continue. I don't know the reasons because I haven't had sight of the docket. All that's been made public by the NPA is that there is no prospect of a successful prosecution. And our position around that, particularly in cases of violence against women, is that that's simply not enough of a reason to be made public. There needs to be a lot more detail. So, you know, to answer your question, I don't know why they're not pursuing it, but it's of concern that the more extensive reasons have not been made available, and I sincerely hope that they have explained it in some more detail to the complainant.
Your thoughts on Mr. Manana saying that a portion of his pension will go to initiatives that fight the issue of violence against women in particular and children. What are your thoughts on that? Some people say that this may be his way of trying to buy his way out of this.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, that's obviously a relatively cynical position, and obviously it's one that's held by a number of people, that simply by allocating or donating financial amounts or monetary amounts to movements or organizations that are dealing with violence against women certainly cannot buy you out of the responsibility that you should be holding. I do think it's important that resources are allocated to organizations that are working with men, that men need to be working with men, but certainly never at the expense of women's organizations who are at the coalface of assisting women through counseling and support, that it should never be at the expense of that. And it's disappointing that Mr. Manana's donations are not going to any women's organizations. So, in our opinion, I think a little more work needs to be done, a little more introspection needs to be done by Mr. Manana.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. That's Bronwyn Pithi from the Women's Legal Centre, just reacting to that information coming through that the ANC's caucus in Parliament, in particular the caucus leader there, Jackson Mthembu, had now finally received the resignation letter of its MP, Mduduzi Manana. Let's